Welcome to Second Take, the show that takes a look at the issues behind the news. It's been a growth negative week for South Africa, with budget uncertainty followed by the imposition of 30% tariffs by the US administration. Terence Creamer joins me to discuss the fallout. Hi, Terence.
Hi, Chanel.
The US tariffs were not necessarily a surprise, but they are still shocking.
They're extremely shocking and extremely bad for South Africa. So, we're getting a 30% on a lot of products. There are a lot of exemptions, particularly in the mineral products and the chemical products. There's a long list of exemptions that have come through from the US. And, most of our 153 billion that we exported last year does come in the form of minerals. But on the manufactured and agricultural product side, which also benefit from trade with the US and also still benefit from our AGOA eligibility, which is very precarious at the moment. Those are not exempt from the 30%, from what I can see, the 30%, as well as from the 25% tariffs on automotive vehicles as well as automotive components. So we export about 35 billion rands worth of vehicles to the US. Mostly, I think it's in the form of the luxury cars produced by BMW and Mercedes-Benz. This has always been a little bit of a bugbear for the US when we got a AGOA eligibility, which gives us duty-free, tariff-free access to the US market on a lot of products, other than the products that we export under the GSP or the most favoured nation and GSP status that we also have. So we've had historically very good access to the US market under those things. And it's always been a bugbear that European car producers have been the main beneficiaries. There are some US manufacturers that have also benefited, but on the whole, so it's always been one of these to and fro's around our AGOA eligibility, as well as our action that we've taken particularly around pork and poultry, which has been the US has been very unhappy about for many years, and they've actually been out of cycle reviews of our AGOA eligibility as a result of that. So we've always had some tensions, but generally we've had really good access. And the products that we produce on the agricultural side counter-seasonal, so we don't really compete generally with US farmers directly. And on the mine product side, and those, as I said, have been exempted, are also key to their manufacturing competitive and what's left of their manufacturing base, especially in the automotive. The platinum group metals are key. There aren't many countries that produce platinum group metals, basically ourselves, which we're the biggest, and then there's Russia and there's Zimbabwe. And obviously the tensions historically with Russia, whether that's true anymore, we'll have to wait and see, but we've been an important source of those minerals. So this is a big shock. As I say, we'll have to see how it plays out, but it's a negative, as you said in your intro, for growth in the South African economy and in the world economy.
How is South Africa responding?
So South Africa still thinks it's able to negotiate some sort of transactional arrangement with the US. We know that there's been a great hostility towards South Africa since President Donald Trump came in for his second term. He's made specific social media and executive order actions, statements and actions against South Africa. He specifically raised the issue of the Expropriation Act as being very bad for certain individuals in South Africa, particularly Afrikaner farmers, and has offered Afrikaner farmers refugee status on the back of that, saying that their land, without evidence, but basically their land is being taken away with nil compensation, which hasn't happened, but that's the narrative, and that narrative has gained traction within the Trump administration. Then we saw they didn't come to some of the G20 events. They didn't like the sort of the inclusive nature of and the climate-related nature of our theme for the G20, which takes place later this year. They say it goes against the grain of their anti-DEI or diversity, equity, inclusion. That they're opposing those sort of things. So that was also came up in our relationships, and it has become an obstacle. And then obviously we've had the Just Energy Transition Partnership. They withdrew from that. PEPFAR, they've withdrawn from that. PEPFAR is a massive amount of money that's come in either directly to help with our fight with HIV and AIDS, or indirectly through NGOs and research, and that is gone. And then we had this terrible fallout from sort of misjudged statements by the former ambassador Ibrahim Rasool in a sort of academic setting, but it was amplified to the point where South Africa could go nowhere and basically had to accept that he was persona non grata and had to withdraw him as our ambassador. We haven't replaced him, but yet we still think we're going to find some sort of deal. We have the AGOA under a review at the moment. It ends in September, but it's effectively ended with these tariffs. But we still have it there in the background as something that we can try and negotiate around and maintain that eligibility. It's not a presidential decision, it's a congressional decision, but I think that these tariffs have sort of put paid to that. So our offer, and it's almost a back to the future, because this is what the US wanted initially, and now it's what we want, is to try and set up some sort of bilateral trade agreement with the US and a quid pro quo type, a give and take a deal. We do have one with the European Union, and it's also been a bugbear for many years. We've got one with Europe, and we don't have one with America, but we've always benefited by through the unilateral deal of AGOA. So why have a bilateral? But these tariffs are broad-based, so they're so broad-based that every country has to go bend a knee to Washington and try and find a deal. So, and where are we going to be in the pecking order? I think we're going to be high. I don't think we're going to be high. I think there's antagonism towards us both on our economic and trade policies, but also on our international relations policies. So I don't think we're going to be high up on the agenda for the US to offer this transactional deal. But we have been working on one for some time. We're going to dust off the trade deals or discussions we had many years ago. I think when Alec Irwin was still the Minister of Trade and Industry, we'll dust off those and see if we can make some bilateral preferential trade agreement offer. We will dust off our plans for some sort of gas import, I think, as a quid pro quo for other exports going into South Africa. We'll make our case for why our agricultural products don't, harm US farmers. We'll make our case for why our mineral products are good, and why, we offer American consumers more choice through the vehicles that we export there. But whether that's going to be in time for the implementation of these tariffs, which I think are around mid-April, I don't see that happening in time. So it's going to affect our trade very directly, and it's going to be a very difficult time for South Africa.
What impact is the lack of GNU unity likely to have on South Africa's ability to navigate this period?
Well, we never seem to miss an opportunity because I think this was something of an opportunity for South Africa to have all its ducks in a row politically. It was a coalition government, it was a business-friendly, a growth-oriented government. And if we were unified, there's a lot of other countries who are aggrieved. And, we would be able to, approach them for better trade deals and better market access. All the countries that are unhappy with what the US is doing. But you need to be united as a government to be able to do that. You need your agricultural minister to be able to go out and speak about agricultural products, your trade industry minister to go out with a unified voice. But now with the breakdown in the government of national unity, possible reconfiguration of that takes our eye off the ball, it's distracting, and we don't have a unified position. And it potentially creates an opposition that was previously inside the GNU that will be quite pro maybe what the US administration is doing on a number of issues, particularly around the Expropriation Act and the concerns that have also been raised about, the Bailey Bill, etc. So it's really a difficult time because it's also difficult. We were about growth this year. It was supposed to be a growth agenda. The VAT in the budget was already seen as a bit of an anti-growth element. But we need that fiscal framework to be solid to create the platform for growth in the real economy and in the financial economy, and that's now not solid. And, we're also entering a world now where, where these tariffs are going to be growth negative for the world. And the direct implications I spoke about earlier, the direct not being able to access the market, but there are a lot of indirect implications. When growth softens globally, the demand for our minerals will go down. So that's why we saw the stock market shocks that we saw yesterday. When there's tariffs in the big market like the US, there's going to be a glut of products looking for markets. We have a fairly low barrier to entry in terms of our trade protection at the moment. So we are going to be one of those markets where there's going to be, too many goods looking for too few markets, and we're going to be one of them. So the competitiveness, or our ability to compete against those imports, is going to be further undermined, and we could see business closures. And then there's also this differentiated tariff regime that the Trump administration has announced. So some of our producing competitors, say for automotive components, face lower tariffs than we do, because 30% is on the higher end. The base was 10%, but some of our peer markets that produce components, etc., are in markets that have faced lower tariff barriers into the US. So they're going to eat our lunch. So we needed a GNU, or we needed a government that had all its ducks in a row, was highly unified, that could go and speak to its other allies that it does have and find market access, and also to say, don't flood our markets, flood our market with cheap, dumb products. But we're not. We've got our eye off the ball. We've got devastatingly bad political distraction, and the bad blood is very high at the moment. So we are shooting ourselves in the foot, and I think, with a reconfigured GNU, if it is, it's also quite weak in terms of numbers, in terms of having to get those votes. The best would be to have the two big parties still in the GNU. Whether a deal can be worked out, or whether so much water and bad blood has flowed under the bridge, it's going to we're going to have to see. But we've really put ourselves in a difficult position at a time when we really need to be unified.
Thank you. That's the Second Take Show for this week. Thank you for watching, and join us again next time for more news analysis. Also, don't forget to listen to the audio version of our Engineering News daily email newsletter.